MLB DFS podcast. I am your host, James Grande. I am joined alongside Colby Conway. Colby, haven't seen you in a long time. Hope everything's going well. It's been a really long time since we've done one of these. I would say, I couldn't even actually remember the last time. But how's everything? How's your how you liking this Thursday slate since we haven't talked in a long time?
Yeah, really looking forward to Friday's slate, I think. That's how I'm looking at this Thursday slate. I mean, I love some of the top price guys in the slate, like some of the elite options, especially some like high profile bats look really nice. I mean, we only have a 7-game slate, couple icons there next to games I don't necessarily like too much, but there's value is going to pop up, and especially as this is just kind of the early preview of the slate, and as we get to the live stream, I believe it's you and Fensty. We'll have a little bit more about lineups, some weather updates. So hopefully more value will surface as the day goes on.
Yeah, and sometimes there's always like changing overnight because we were recording the night before, like changes in pitchers that are gonna throw on that day. Like randomly had Kodai Senga and Max Scherzer switched the other day for no reason, and then we, doing this podcast overnight. I think last week you and I had 6 starters that we liked all not pitch, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of them was Nathan Eovaldi, so something to monitor. I think that day he was the only good pitcher. I believe it was probably a Thursday slate because Thursdays are usually the worst slates of the week. So keep that in mind. But Colby, before we get into the breakdown of position by position, anything over on the Vegas front that we should be looking at in terms of money lines? I see, Julio Urias is a big favorite. Tanner Beebe and the Guardians, big favorites. But anything we should be looking at in terms of over-unders that catch your eye?
Yeah, the ones that are out right now, I mean, we got Mets, Diamondbacks
Ooh,
opening
yeah.
at 10.5. That's a pretty high line. Obviously, Urias is back for the Dodgers, but with Oviedo going for Pittsburgh, and we're looking at 8.5 at that line with some of those lefty bats in that Dodger lineup. That kind of seems like an over to me. And then Nathan Eovaldi, highest priced pitcher on the slate in a game with a double-digit run total opening up. I don't know if that's more of an indictment on Cutter Crawford, or maybe things aren't necessarily looking as great for Eovaldi. But yeah, some interesting ones. We don't have Coors, thank goodness. That's probably just a good thing that we have with this slate.
Yes.
And then other than that, Cleveland, big time favorites, just because honestly, right now, any right-hander going up against Kansas City, you seem like you're a lock for, I don't know, what?
Dude,
8 strikeouts? 9 strikeouts?
Yeah, 7 innings, 8 strikeouts is like the base line. I wish all my shares of Minnesota could just face Kansas City for 162, but I digress. Yeah, definitely some interesting totals there. 10 runs in 2 separate games. I think naturally in Fenway, we see higher totals in the summer just with the way the ball carries there. And, the Green Monster may be big, but it ain't too far out there. So definitely something to monitor if either of those games move. But let's hop into the pitching position. And you and I were talking about it before. It's brutal because we mentioned Eovaldi, former Red Sox, going back to, I shouldn't say going home because he's from Texas, but going back to Boston where he mostly found his success. Like he started to be okay with the Yankees, but he really broke out last year for the Red Sox, and he's done that and more with the Rangers. But obviously a tough matchup here. Kirby has a tough matchup against a Houston offense that hits righties and righties well, especially, with the emergence of Yanyer Diaz and Jose Abreu being back. Urias should be the odds-on best pitcher of the slate, but he came back and got shelled and looked against the Royals. Like it was the Royals, the team that we just were talking about, how bad they've been. Who are we looking at here as our top arms on this slate?
I mean, we have to give Eovaldi credit. I mean, since June 1, Boston's, 11th worst strikeout rate, just in terms of WRC plus, a little bit below the league average, coming at 97. So, I mean, we have to consider him. I'm scared to death of Kirby against Houston. They're red hot, white hot, whatever the hottest color of flame there is. That's what Houston is at this point. I think they're like 8-2 in their last 10 or something like that. So they're obviously streaking. I'd love to play Urias, but I have no clue where he's at. It's a little price. If he was like the 5th or 6th highest price pitcher, I'd be more inclined to maybe give it a go. I think he's just going to be so highly owned simply because of the PIT right there in his opponent.
Yep.
I think that's
Yep.
going to be the reason for him. I love Tanner Bybee, though. It's Kansas City. It's a righty. Since June 1, they're striking out a bundle of the time, about 23%. That team, WRC plus 78, no thanks. And Bybee's finally started to get the strikeouts back a little bit. They've ticked up a bit, and it kind of seems like right now what we give like Milwaukee flack for against lefties is kind of what Kansas City is to the
Yes.
right-handed pitching.
I agree. I think he's the top arm of the slate, and I worry about Urias' pitch count as well. Like
Mhm.
66 pitches in his return. We already know Dave Roberts is very annoying with that to begin with. He limits pitchers all the time. Like I think Clayton Kershaw is probably the only guy that he really like lets go at times. And we even saw Clayton Kershaw 7 perfect innings last year, and then he like took him out. Like Dave Roberts is not afraid to get people out of the game. I think Bybee is 100% the best arm of the slate. The Guardians 105, 105, 96. They're letting him throw 25 plus fantasy points in back-to-back starts. I think without a doubt. I like Nathan Eovaldi, and obviously Boston's offense is scary, but like Nathan Eovaldi's scary. I mean, the guy has turned into a fantastic pitcher. He's averaged 23 fantasy points per game over his last 10 starts, 226 ERA, 182 batting average against, 22 fantasy points per game on the year. Like he knows how to pitch in Fenway. I'm willing to get to Eovaldi because it just kind of falls off a cliff after this. Like, where else would you go? Like, I have actually just one name that I'm interested in on the rest of this league.
Yeah, I do like Kyle Bradish, and I know that's kind of the one that
Yep,
you're in on as well. I mean,
that's
that
it.
Yankee offense, I mean, you can attack them. They're barely above the Mendoza line, like
Yep.
in recent memory against right-handed pitching. And I like his chances for a win. I would love to be in on Luis Severino. I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah, it's bad.
It doesn't, it's not there. And then beyond that, like you say, Kikuchi, Chicago's not great against lefties. As I look here for the year, they do strike out a good bit against lefties. But one of my top plays of the night is a lefty masher on that team, and I would rather have him in my lineup than anything. So I
Agreed.
don't think I can quite go there. I mean, other than that, everybody at the bottom, like Jordan Lyles stinks. Carlos Carrasco,
Yes.
I'm going to talk about him a bit later. I don't know if Cutter Crawford's in line for a win. I mean, outside of after Bradish, it gets ugly and it gets ugly quick.
Yeah, I think Bradish is the guy, just given how bad the Yankees have been. And
Mhm.
truthfully, outside of that one start in Toronto against a team who doesn't really strike out, the strikeouts have been really impressive for Kyle Bradish 7, 7, 8, and 10, excluding that Toronto game in his last 4 of his last 5 starts. And we know DraftKings, you need strikeouts for your starters. Strikeouts are king, 20 plus fantasy points in all 4 of those games. Um, Aaron Judge ain't walking through that door, so you don't have to worry about that. Especially, he has allowed 8 home runs, so he is susceptible there. But does have a solid ground ball rate. I really don't know where else to go. Like Ryan Nelson has been probably the best of the bunch lately, just with back-to-back starts of 7 plus innings and 1 run against good offenses, San Francisco, LA. I don't think we can trust that against the Mets, but like maybe because it's the Mets. But I think you and I both have some interest in Mets bats. So yeah, I largely think it's Evaldi, Bybee, Bradish, and just circulate. If you're playing multiple lineups, I mean, if you want to take darts on Kirby, sure. Severino, sure, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel great. Colby, before we get into our hitters breakdown, infield and outfield, I want to tell everyone about the real time sports pick'em promo that we have. And the real time sports, play the real time sports daily pick'em contest. You got to set a lineup of player props, and if you hit them all, you win. Like you and I did on Wednesday evening show. If you guys want to go check that out, you can go over to fantasyalarm.com or go check out our video on YouTube, our live stream on YouTube, and check out what we did. Justin Steele strikeouts and Matt Olson total bases was the 2 plays that Colby and I went with. But they have baseball, golf, football, basketball, and all different types of sports. What you have to do is you go to rtsports.com/alarm, and first time depositors get a 100% instant match up to $200 using code ALARM23. That is rtsports.com/alarm, and first time depositors get a 100% instant match up to $200 using code ALARM23, ALARM23, all one word. And please play responsibly. If you need help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. With that aside, Colby, let's get into our infield breakdown. Who are your top infield plays of the day?
I do like Jose Ramirez a good bit. Anytime that team is facing a righty, Jose Ramirez is always going to be in play. Really, any of the Cleveland left-handed bats I like a bunch. So we'll have to see if the Naylor Bros, at least one of them, cracks the lineup. I know Josh is going to be in there, but he's a play that I like a good bit in that one. Obviously, Jose Ramirez is my top one there. And I also really like Marcus Semien. I mean, I know he's the highest price second base, or second highest price if you're going to count Mookie. But it's a really good spot for Semien. You know, as you look at the numbers, he's been very good against righties. Cutter Crawford has reverse splits, and that righties have hit him better than lefties this season. And all Semien's done is posted a 343 WOBA with 10 home runs against right-handed pitching this year. And if you like home road splits on the road, Semien 282 with a 351 WOBA. So Semien's expensive. Second base sometimes provides some good value for you to pick from. I don't know if that's going to be the story on this slate. So that may be a position to pay up for. And if you're going to stack Texas, you're going to have to include Marcus Semien.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add about like top names in the infield. I will say Josh Jung is interesting just because Cutter Crawford does have the reverse splits and he has been good against righties and lefties. So Josh Jung is fine for me. In terms of value, I like the value on this slate. I like Andrew Vaughn against left-handed pitching quite a bit, 3,700. And we know Kikuchi's susceptible to the home run ball, and we know Vaughn has some power against lefties. I like Jordan Westberg, who is having another good evening, back-to-back games with extra base hits now. And the aforementioned Luis Severino, I mean, he's just struggling, dude. Like, I wish that wasn't the case, being a fan of the Yankees. But he has just been bad. And righties, and you talked about this when Westberg got called up. You and I were doing the show together, and Westberg had all the power flashing against righties in the minors. This year against right-handed bats, Luis Severino, 304 average allowed, 930 OPS, 395 WOBA allowed. Like, righties are crushing him, and lefties are not too far behind. But Jordan Westberg hitting from the right side, very good value there. And I like Brett Beatty because lefty power against Ryan Nelson has been very fruitful this year. We're going to get to, I'm sure, a Mets outfielder as well to pair with him, maybe a couple. But I do like Brett Beatty. I know they're hitting him ninth, which isn't the best, but if you are going to play like a Beatty Nimmo mini stack, that's a little interesting to me, especially if Beatty is hitting ninth. So I like Brett Beatty. What say you for some infield value, Colby?
Yeah, I really want to see as lineups lost or the lineups come closer to being released and everything like that, what the White Sox end up doing. Because when you look at the lineup in their last two games against lefties, the one time Zach Remillard hit ninth, and the game before that, though, he hit first. If he's going to lead off, very cheap price, very good of late, last 10 at bats against lefties, 6 for 10, 3 runs scored, 2 RBIs, even taken 3 walks. Also has a stolen base, but whatever is that worth? Even if he hits ninth, he's interesting. I don't know if Chicago is going to be my contrarian stack play, but they have 2 particular outfielders I really like. Obviously, everyone knows the one in Luis Robert, but if Remillard's going to lead off, he's very, very intriguing as a value option in the infield. He's at second base, so he's the one. Pretty much, it looks like second base. I'm going all the way down to Remillard, or I'm going all the way up to Semien/Betts, but that's a value guy I kind of like as we look at the slate of the early part.
Yeah, I like that too, because he has been awesome. And you mentioned it. I mean, he has 2 stolen bases in the limited time that he's been up. I mean, he's only played 15 games, 2 stolen bases. Expand that to what? I mean, every 30 games, 4 stolen bases. So 15 stolen base guy over the course of a season. So maybe a little more. Math is hard. So Yeah, I like Remillard quite a bit. 3 extra base hits, 8 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, hitting 366. Not too shabby, Colby. Let's move on to the outfield here. And I think both of us are in lockstep here with one Luis Robert, who, you know what? I'm just happy that they're pricing him this way because he was under 5K. Like if you look through, I mean, dude, look at what in the hell are we doing? Look at the freaking fantasy. If he's not homering, he's stealing a base. If he's not stealing a base, he's probably hitting a home run or a double or just doing something incredibly productive because, hey, newsflash, this is who we all thought he was going to be. And then he's had a couple fluke injuries for the last few years. He probably is going to be the cover of this show. As I talk through who I'm thinking about making the cover of the show, it's probably going to be Luis Robert because why the hell wouldn't it be?
I mean, what number do you start with? 716 slug against lefties, 358 ISO against lefties, 482 WOBA against lefties, 216 WRC plus against lefties.
That
And then it
is
doesn't even matter because once they take the lefty out of the game and they bring in a righty out of the pen, it's like, well, Luis Robert is better against lefties than righties. Well, don't tell him that because I'm looking here. Last 2 weeks, Luis Robert, 406 average with 6 home runs in 32 at bats against right-handed pitching. You just can't get this guy out right now. You have nothing. You can't. It's just up there. Might as well just lob it in there and just hope that maybe he only hits it off the wall at this point.
Yep.
He's white hot right now. So make him the cover. I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like even in this game against Oakland, where he's 1 for 3, he walks twice and has a stolen base. Like he's just doing everything. I mean, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 of his last 10 games, he's given us double-digit DraftKings points. Like
he's averaging 17 and a half over his last 10.
That's crazy.
And you look at his price at 5.6. Now we got to math a little bit. So let's just say just make it 6 times 3 is 18. You're almost about 3x just based on his average. And that's not even talking, God forbid he hits one off the wall. God forbid he gets 2 RBIs. Maybe he steals a base. He had that 0 mixed in there. And then other than that, it's everything's double digits.
I know, 17 and a half with 0 mixed in too. So it makes you wonder if he just gets on base once in that game, what could have happened. I'm just going to plug him now. I know we're going to talk about other people, but it doesn't matter. He's the top play. I think for me, if I was spending up on anyone else in the outfield, it'd be Adolis Garcia, homered again on Wednesday. Just seems to he's going to go for another season of 35 home runs. And, people are going to still come into next year and be like, oh, he can't do it again. Right? I mean, he's going to do it again. I'm just saying he's going to do it again. And then obviously the Dodgers, whatever Dodger you want to spend up on, you get to. What do you got for top spends? Anyone different than Luis Robert, Dodgers, and Adolis Garcia?
A couple of Mets outfielders that we kind of hit on a little bit. I like Brandon Nimmo, top of the order. Ryan Nelson has struggled against lefties all year, and Nimmo kind of hits lefties and righties well. Like looking at his numbers this year, 370 WOBA against righties, 264 average, 13 homers. So he's good against right-handers, so I don't mind going with a guy like him. And then obviously he's still our free square for a little bit, but Colton Cowser, another cheap outfielder. Plug him in there, get yourself some value.
He's still 2K? Oh, he is. I guess the algorithm probably says oh, why would I make this guy anything more than 2K if he has no stats? But I don't know, 2,700, 2,900. I feel like these things need to progress a little faster than they do.
Probably the Friday slate, he'll probably be in that 26, 27 range.
Probably.
I think it's that third game for them usually is when it bumps.
Yeah, especially when you look and he had the RBI single and then scored a run. So he just walked again. So when we've now been on base, we have 9 fantasy points with, he's on base with the chance to do more, right? So,
and for the record, Westberg, when he came up, 2,000, 2,900. So it was that third game that he got the bump. I would expect this will probably be the last time we get $2,000 Colton Cowser.
Yeah, and if honestly, if we're gonna get a lineup, 7 or 7, 8 of Kauser Westberg, could be a nice little stack again if you're heading into your very very cheap stack as well. Like they are both still free, so love the Kauser play. The only other person I'd really mention, and we could sit here and talk Tommy Pham all day. I love to. I'd
That's
love
what
to
we've
talk
been
Tommy
doing.
Pham.
That's what we've been doing.
That's kind of what we've been doing. Leody Taveras continues to hit, and
Hmm.
like it's funny. I've said this a couple times, but a few years ago he was drafted as everyone's late stolen base play, and now like he just does everything. Like he hits for power. He's 26 extra base hits, including 10 home runs, and he's not really like he can steal bases, but he's not like the 25 to 30 stolen base guy that everyone thought he was going to be. Um, and maybe that's because he doesn't need to be, because when he hits ninth, next thing you know, Marcus Simeon's doubling you in, or Corey Seager is doubling you in, and it's just the merry-go-round that is the Texas Rangers offense. So as long as they're going to keep giving us Leody Taveras 3,400, I'm going to keep playing it. And I think, and I said it to you before, for DraftKings' sake, and to make things a little more difficult, I think the Texas pricing should become that of the Atlanta pricing, where Eddie Rosario is $4,100. We should have Leody Taveras over 4K at this point. Ezekiel Duran should be Marcelo Zuna at like $4,300. Like they should. There's no reason that we're still getting these guys under 4K. I digress, and we move on to our last segment of the day before we get into our lineup builds, and that is the Grande's Gems and Colby's Cornerstones. So, Colby, from your corner store on the Cornerstones, Colby Conway, hit us up with all of your top plays at each home run call, top stack, contrarian stack, star of the night, and value play of the night.
Home run call, I'm going Christian Walker. I'm going to
Ooh.
talk about the D-backs in a bit, but right-handers against Carlos Carrasco, something to take note of. Top stack, Dodgers. Contrarian stack goes right with Christian Walker. Diamondbacks, love the righties in that lineup. Star of the night's Luis Robert. And although I just talked about the D-backs righties, the value play of the night is going to be left-handed bat Jake McCarthy.
Yeah, love that they're hitting him near the top of the lineup last few games. I mean, just infinitely more value there. For me, I'm gonna go Luis Robert as my home run call. Shocker, shocker there. Top stack, I'm gonna go Rangers. I am gonna go contrarian stack as the Chicago White Sox. I do think there's some good value in that lineup. You mentioned Remillard. I talked Vaughn, and then you can pair them obviously with Robert and Eloy Jimenez in the outfield. Start of the night, I have Marcus Simeon written down, but I'm just gonna on the fly change that to Luis Robert. I can't. I mean, we've talked about him enough to just. I think you and I can both just go all in and say that he's if probably the top play of the night. I mean, he's already in our lineup, and we haven't built any with anything else. And then my value play of the night, someone I mentioned, Leody Taveras, $3,400 is an excellent price. So why don't we get into our lineup construction here, Colby? I'm just gonna go Bybee. I think we both agreed that was probably the first pitcher that we want to build with.
Mhm.
I guess the next question is, can we afford Nathan Eovaldi, or should we go with Kyle Bradish? Is ultimately the decision we have to make. Now, I think when it comes to Eovaldi, I think there's a clear path, and it's probably using Kauser, which I'm okay with using Kauser regardless, because he's still a stone cold minimum, and we've already seen. I mean, the Severino struggles are clear. He's 2K. He's a stud. He's one of the top prospects in baseball. So I think the Kauser play for me is like lock and load. What else do we want to lock and load after Kauser, Robert? And this is with the Evaldi play at pitcher. We could also always go to Bradish if we needed to, but I think probably for highest ceiling, Bybee Evaldi is probably the pairing, right?
Yeah, and then I mean, like I'd love to get Semien in there, but going with those two arms, I don't know if we're gonna be able to get that's another 5K plus bat in there.
Let's toy with it, because catcher is going to be a position that we can likely spend down on, and Yusei Kikuchi pitching also, like, You
That's who I
mentioned
was thinking.
well, Tom Murphy, I mean, he's been insane. You mentioned Naylor, who hasn't been great, but he does get the Jordan Lyles matchup. Sevi Zavala has been someone who's hit lefties really well in the past. He has a couple of big games, and by a couple I mean he has a double down game here, and he has a double down game against the Yankees here. Um, I don't know why he has two double down games on the year because he has 6 home runs and 4 of them have come in 2 games this year. But whatever. Do we was Murphy the person that like piqued your interest right there? Is that what you were thinking, or Naylor?
That was the first name that I went to. The other thing we could do, I know the matchups from the pitching side don't dictate it, but I mean, Yanier Diaz is just
Yeah,
scorching
matching.
right now,
Yep.
and he gets a righty, and that's the better side of his split. So, I mean, if it's a matter of saving, looking at Murphy, $1,000 to go down to him, I'd almost rather just throw Diaz in there.
Okay, well then let's see what we can do with Diaz because I was just looking at it from a perspective as to save us anything.
We can move off it then after we look at
Well,
it a little bit.
yeah. Let's see. Third base. We could play Westberg. We could play Beatty, who I think both you and I think the Westberg play was more liked, well received. Um, Value shortstops. Nick Gonzalez has been really good for the Pirates. Former top 25 overall prospect that wasn't on any prospect list this year, but for the 3 years prior was. Um, he gets a righty lefty matchup. Was there any like who was there any other like really cheap outfield value that we wanted? It was
I mean, Tommy
probably
Pham's not all that much expensive, right? He's in like, is he still stuck in the threes?
yeah, 34. I was gonna say him, McCarthy, and Where do they have McCarthy? This is the disrespect. $2,800.
Oh,
That's a plug.
all right. Yeah, we'll put him in.
That's a plug. We could play. I'm trying to like figure out. I mean, first base. So, did you like any value? It was a. I really like Andrew Vaughn against a lefty, and
Mhm.
he's gonna hit kind of behind Robert. They're probably gonna hit third and fifth respectively
I'm good
as
with
like a
him.
little mini stack. You're good with Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have 3,700 for a third baseman and a shortstop. What are we thinking here?
I mean,
Short
third base could be Westberg.
could be Westberg, and that would give us 4,200 for a third baseman, or for a shortstop rather. I don't. So let's just do this for the sake of the lineup. We'll go from Yanier to Tom Murphy because we can always if that gets us Lindor or Witt or Gunner. Any of those names more interesting to you?
Okay, so I messed around over here with Bobby, Eovaldi, Murphy, Vaughn, Semien. I moved up to Max Muncy at third base, and then
Ooh,
we could go to Nick Gonzalez at short
I like Nick Gonzalez. If
with
Urias is going to
700
continue
left.
to struggle, I mean, hey, if Urias is going to continue to struggle, so like it is kind of a really good play. Oh, we're so close to getting Jose Ramirez too. If we wanted to do more Texas, you could also play Jung off Muncie and then maybe Volpe at shortstop. But also, you don't need to go Volpe. 3,600. We could do a mini stack with Texas and go Jung and Tavares.
Yeah, and actually, the
Well,
more I look at it, Gonzalez has not been good against lefties.
would you want to do Jung at third over Muncie and then Tavares over McCarthy? And then we have a 3-man Texas, a 2-man White Sox, and then one off Cowser. Oh, I still have Nick Gonzalez in there.
I
Shoot.
mean, you can leave him in there. I mean, he's still young. Like, there's still time
Okay.
for him to turn around. So go with him, or we can always go to Caballero at second base too if we like him.
Yeah, I like Caballero. So
Let's go
we
ahead.
can we'll leave Gonzalez and then leave the option to go to Caballero, especially if
Yep.
they do decide to lead him off. But the lineup as constructed: Bybee, Avaldi, Murphy, Vaughn, Semien, Jung, Gonzalez, Robert, Kauser, Tavares will be back at 5 Eastern Standard Time.